We will move on then under introductions and presentations. The first one this evening is Ken Wilson. Ken, welcome, and he's here to provide us an update on our beach nourishment project.
Right off the bat, I just wanted to touch base. Our company's got a little bit of a different emblem, different logo. We've been working for the town as Coastal Planning and Engineering of North Carolina since probably 2010, maybe something like that. Went through the feasibility studies, but our firm's been acquired a couple of different times through different divestitures and things like that. But the latest iteration of the ownership of the company is a newly created company called Aptum. So just wanted to bring that up. It shouldn't affect you guys at all. All of your contracts are through our Coastal Planning and Engineering of North Carolina entity, so it's a little bit different for most of our clients in North Carolina. But just our emails changed a little bit, but other than that, same old familiar face. Just going to go through some construction progress and photos. We'll talk a little bit about the schedule, talk briefly about monitoring and maintenance, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of those items. Here's a map we put together. Shows the project limits within Kill Devil Hills. So those green lines got the south boundary and the north boundary. Of course, the north boundary is the town line with Kitty Hawk. South boundary is down there around Prospect Avenue or so. Those blue lines shown are the sublines, so the sand where the pipes where the dredge actually hooks up to and pumps the sand either north or south. And we've put together this little animation here that shows about July 22nd, July 23rd, they started pumping from the Helga Street station. Took them about 5 or 6 days before they were actually into Kitty Hawk. On the south end, they started around I think it was around July 29th, and they pumped south. They finished what we call the taper, where it gets a little thin down there near Prospect. They finished that up around July 3rd, I believe, and then they flipped and they started working north for a few days. They got up around 1st Street, then they came in with that second subline. They pumped south to tie into the existing fill, and then over the weekend they flipped and started moving north. Right now the construction site is right in front of the northern section of the Sea Ranch, in front of the Mariner as well. So that's where they are at this point in time. Just the same sort of thing going north. Obviously they went north from Helga Street into Kitty Hawk, and then they had some issues with one of their pipelines. So so that the dredge wasn't sitting idle, they've actually started pumping a little bit more of the southern part of Kitty Hawk. And then this is a map of the northern portion of Kitty Hawk and southern shores. I've got some photos like that iteration that I just went through. Everything started there around Helga Street on June 22nd, June 23rd. This is the subline coming in. They build that pad up. Takes them a couple of days to create a work surface where they can move all their equipment out onto the beach. And then they start adding pipe on as they go. So this is moving towards Kitty Hawk at the Helga Street. This is 2 days later. This is another 5 days later, so they make some pretty quick progress. At this point in time, they're jumping into Kitty Hawk, and then by July 5th, the day after 4th of July, this is a shot that shows how far north they got from that Helga Street, and then another vantage point shows them moving south from White Street to kind of tie into that area. This is the last of the drone shots we have from Friday. Showing them try to tie that gap in there. They actually finished that up over the weekend, so right now they're pumping north from White Street. This is kind of what the ground level looks like, that stretch between Tateway and Helga, completed section of the beach. I just showed this. These are some pipes that are sitting out around Arch Street right now. They're just storing them out on the beach right now until they get that Helga Street pipeline finished up or repaired. We've talked to them a couple times just to make sure there's plenty of flagging around that, plenty of tape. It's kind of a little kid's playground if they don't keep an eye on it. So every day when we go out there, we watch it and make sure that they're keeping things around it so that nobody's getting into that. Then on the south end, sort of the same sort of thing, starting around Landing, moving south. This is just a few days in. Really didn't take them very long to construct the south end, and that south end taper. I think they were pumping for about 4 days. At this point in time, July 6th, they've actually flipped, and they're working their way north from that same landing street subline. And then this, by July 7th, they had jumped up to a subline that's up around 2nd Street. And over the weekend, they closed that gap that you can see there in that picture. Down there in the right-hand corner is, like I mentioned, the C Ranch. So as of today, the pipe has been flipped around. They're actually working north from the C Ranch. It's really hard from the ground view to get a good shot of the dunes just because there's, all the sand is the same color. There's no transition or anything. But I've got a couple of shots that try to give you a good vantage point of that slope on the front of the dune. It goes from an elevation of 15 feet at the top of the dune down to 6 feet, which is where the berm is. Over time, that'll change a little bit. Right now, if you go out there on a constructed piece of the beach, you've got that flat 6-foot section out there. But if you go to unconstructed parts of the beach, you know that from the time you get down off the dune, it kind of tapers down at an elevation all the way down to the water line. And over time, that flat 6-foot area will adjust. So at some point, it shouldn't be as big of a drop to go down from that 15 feet to 6 feet. You'd expect some of that sand to pile up, and some of the sand fencing and the vegetation that'll be installed will help that process out as well. This is right in front of the Mariner yesterday, so you can kind of see that slope there on the front of the dune. That slope is on a 1-on-5 slope, but we've been coordinating a lot with the ocean rescue folks to make sure that they're comfortable being able to get their trucks up there. And I've been pretty impressed. They've had no problems with getting their trucks up there. And then on the backside, the emergency entrance at 2nd Street and 3rd Street, we've been making sure that they're comfortable with the slope on the backside of the dune as well. So far, 2nd Street and 3rd Street, Dave and his crew are pretty happy with it. This is a shot kind of showing in the foreground or in the background there, up on the top of the picture. You can see how they've kind of sloped the back slope of that dune, sloping down towards the existing dune. In the foreground there, on this side of on the south side of those steps, there's a little bit of a hole there. We're talking to the contractors about trying to put some additional fill in, so it's a little bit more of a slope there. But that back slope that you can see at the top, that's what the entrance onto 2nd Street and onto 3rd Street look like, the emergency access that the Ocean Rescue are using, so no problem there. That'll do it for the photos. Just a quick update on the schedule. Like I said, construction started at Helga June 22nd. Construction started at Landing down there on the south end on June 29th. As of yesterday, one of the 2 smaller dredges that have been working down there on the south end has now demobilized, has left the project site. The other dredge, the Padre Island, is scheduled to leave later this week, probably around Thursday. Right now, it left this morning or this afternoon around 1 o'clock to go get some fuel in Norfolk. Should be back working tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get 2 or 3 more days out of it. And it'll continue to pump north from that 2nd Street subline. So, the plan is hopefully they can clear those 2 big hotels down there. Once those 2 dredges have demobilized, they'll basically break all the pipe back to the subline at 2nd Street. They'll probably move some of that equipment off of the beach and then store everything else up where they can, put a fence around it, and it will no longer be an active construction area. So all the public will be allowed in there. There'll probably be some signs up around the perimeter, just don't get onto the equipment, but they'll clean that up as much as possible. And then it'll sit like that until they wake their way down from the south and tie in somewhere in that area. So when will that tie-in be? Right now, the anticipated completion date is somewhere in the middle of that 2nd week of August, the 8th and 9th, something like that. Obviously, things are constantly in flux, but based on their schedule right now, looks like sometime in the middle of that 2nd week in August. The last slide, as far as monitoring and maintenance, the maintenance plan, which is something that Meredith actually brought up to the attention of all 4 of the towns that we're working with on this project, is that if a storm were to impact the project, part of what needs to happen to make sure that the project is eligible for reimbursement from FEMA if there's damage done during a declared disaster is that you've got a maintenance plan in place. And so Meredith stressed that, with the fact that there's going to be several projects done and they're done at different times, and the post-construction report may not be done until later in the fall, and the possibility of a storm coming through. She asked if there was something we could do to make sure there was, a documented maintenance plan in place at the time the project's actually finished constructing. So we've got all of that in place. We've actually drafted up a plan. It's going through some internal review now, but we anticipate being able to provide staff that draft plan by the time they're finished constructing the project in, that first or second week of August. And then we'll go back and forth with staff to make sure that, if something happened at the end of August or September, God forbid, literally, at least we would have this maintenance plan in place, and when FEMA comes asking for all the documentation, that, everything's been laid out clear for them. Like I said, the post-construction maintenance event is scheduled for October 2017. That's all part of the construction contract that we have with the county that you all are cost sharing in. Following up with that, so that will basically be the baseline survey of the starting point for all the subsequent monitoring events. Typically, we'll want to come out and do a monitoring event every spring. We've been talking to staff about getting those contracts in place, but every spring, probably the end of April, early May, we'll come out and we'll do surveys along every 1,000-foot profile. It'll take us a couple months to crunch that data, but looking at that data in a lot of detail shows, what areas are eroding faster, which areas are eroding slower, shows you the changes in the shoreline, and that's kind of how we keep track of how well the project is performing, and at what point in time, plans need to be made to start thinking about that maintenance cycle. And then finally, the last bullet I put on there is that we'll continue to coordinate with staff on planting and vegetating the dunes. I know Meredith's been in touch with both contractors. The sand fencing, I imagine, is going to be starting pretty soon, and then the planting will be starting sometime around that second week of August. The same time they'll finish construction, the plan is that the vegetation contractor will come in and start working in those areas where the project was first constructed, so they'll kind of follow where the dredges were. The reason for that is that they like to give the dune some time to have some good rain fall on it and get some of that salt out of the sand, so that the plants, that there's not too much salt in that sand, since it all just came right out of the ocean. So that's kind of the logic behind that. But yeah, with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Ken?
I don't have any questions, but I'll tell you, I'm very impressed with the way the beach is looking now. And I went to the beach and I was in the taper section, and I was like, what's going on here? It's not right. And I realized that this is the product of the beach nourishment. I was wow.
Yep. Yeah, it moves pretty quick. I mean, even in that spot that was constructed at Helga, and then they went north of there. If you go, a block south of Helga, you can already see some of the sand starting to drift into that area. One of the things that when we talked to Duck a lot, obviously they were the first ones to get theirs constructed, was that, that one of those things that we've talked about time and time again is that they build the beach wider on purpose, and that a portion of that beach, probably 40% of that wide flat beach, is going to move in the next 6 months and start moving out into the outer portion of the profile to equilibrate that whole profile. But now is the time when the beach is really wide and everybody's happy, other than the people whose vacation might have gotten cut short a couple of days. When people are talking to you about the project, just make sure you're reminding them that it is wide, but it's sort of artificially wide. 6 months from now, that's where you'll get a true gauge of the finished product. So just want to keep that in mind.
Yes. Great. Thank you so
All right.
much, Ken. Appreciate
Sure.
the great work.
Thanks, Ken.